I refuse to be distracted by other people trying to mess with my life. Okay, sorry. I have real world stuff going on and it's making it difficult for me to focus on getting into this video. But I'm going to shake that off. Not a Taylor Swift reference. But let me focus. Okay? Okay. Let's get into this. Hi, I am Song W. Erickson. This is my channel where I talk about whatever's on my mind. And lately, I've let me see. How do I get into this? Years ago, when I started to realize just how much the internet was opening things up for independent creators, I was thrilled. You know, the idea that you can just create things online, or you can create things, put them online, find an audience, and be successful with that. Whether it's a comic, or music, or movies, or books, or animation. Suddenly the barrier to entry was so much lower. You don't have to go through the predatory music industry contracts, or Big Five publishing that plays things so safe and will reject something even if they think it's good, but just because they don't know that it'll sell the way they want it to. And all these things, suddenly you don't have to deal with that. Suddenly there's no middleman playing gatekeeper, and you can put something out, find your audience, and build something with that. That is so incredible. Just that whole idea. That's amazing, right? And especially when I found out about Hazbin Hotel. Now, I was late to Hazbin Hotel. I was kind of aware of it in the periphery, but it wasn't until season 1 actually came out that I started hearing about how it started as a pilot that Vivziepop put out on YouTube, and then it got picked up and all that. And I'm like, that is so cool. And especially in an era where Hollywood, especially, is just so overly cautious and doesn't want to do anything that doesn't have a nostalgia bait title on it. Which isn't entirely true. There are a lot of original movies and stories that come out. People just aren't paying as much attention to them, and that's a whole other thing. But that's not what I'm talking about today. But I was so excited when I saw the possibilities for this. But then, in the last couple years, I've seen this, frankly, unsettling shift in the audience, so to speak. And as a creative, it frustrates me. And as a human, it unsettles me, if that makes sense. The way I see people on social media become so entitled. I want to say the word possessive, but that's not quite even right. The way fans will argue with creators about their own stories and their own projects. And this isn't entirely new. The first time I remember really hearing about this is there was a manga that ended, and people were so mad that the ship they wanted didn't end up happening. And the creator was like, that was never my intention. That was never the story I was gonna tell. And they were sending death threats and saying, you need to rewrite the ending. You need to give us what we want. What? That is so bizarre to me. And it just keeps going, and it keeps getting worse. And now with Hazbin Hotel, we have people saying that Vivziepop is wasting her own characters and doesn't know her own characters and is ruining them. And then we have the Amazing Digital Circus, where Gooseworks had the audacity to say, hey, this one character, even if you like them, they're a secondary character. They're not a main character. They're not an antagonist, or they're not a protagonist. They're secondary. And people flipping out and saying, well, that's not how it's written, and how can you say that? And calling her misogynist for that? I don't know. I still have not watched The Amazing Digital Circus, but like that was the first real controversy I remember seeing about it, was people throwing a fit that Gooseworks had the audacity to say that Ragatha was not a main character. And it's two things. One, why are you arguing with the creator? Two, just because a character is your favorite does not mean they have to be a main character. And just because they're not a main character isn't a bad thing. It just means they're not the focus of the story. And so if the finale ends up dedicating a certain amount of time to the antagonist, that's the story. And yeah, the antagonist is more of a main character than a secondary character. The way people talk about that is so weird to me. And ever since then, it seems like every time I turn around, there's something new. Someone else freaking out over something Gooseworks said or did or didn't say, quite frankly. I'm not going to address the controversy with the voice actor. Frankly, I think it's ridiculous, but what do you want Gooseworks to do about it? Gooseworks is not the problem in that situation. What do you want? But again, I'm not getting into that. Then there was the controversy of, oh, the movie is going to be in theaters, and people claiming that that was everything from just like, oh, this is greedy, this is and I talked about this in another video, right? My whole video about indie animation succeeds, and that's bad for some reason, because that really is how people talk about it, is like, oh, well, this thing was indie and niche, but now that it's actually making money, suddenly Glitch is an evil corporation. When it's like, that's not how that works. That just because something is successful, and just because a company makes some money off of it, and then they turn around and reinvest that into other indie projects, does not make them an evil corporation. If Glitch is the studio out here picking up a bunch of different indie projects, that does not mean they have a monopoly. It means they don't have enough competition, and other studios are welcome to do that, but they're not. I mean, I'm sure there's some out there. But it's like, that does not make Glitch a monopoly. That is not how that works. And people throw around these words, and I'm just sitting here going, you're using these words. I don't think you know what that word actually means. And it's like, you've been trained by the internet that big, successful company bad, and just run with that. Like, that really is how it feels sometimes. And they don't understand business. And it's like, now Glitch has their new pilot for Gameoverse, or Game Over. I've heard people say Game Oververse, but it's spelled Gameoverse, so I don't know. Point is, as soon as the pilot dropped, they rolled out merch, because they have said that 80% of their revenue that they use to fund indie projects comes from merch sales. And people are saying, oh, it's icky that they rolled out merch as soon as they had the pilot, and claiming that because it seemed like they had tested it and knew it would test well and it would be successful, then it wasn't indie anymore. Listen to me. Listen to me. An indie project is not no longer indie just because they took the time to go, will this be successful? Is this something that can actually find an audience? Of course, Glitch is going to do that. Of course, any studio is going to do that. That does not mean they are no longer indie. That words mean things. Words mean things. And we have, every day we fall farther from God's light. And it makes me so nervous. Because like I said, I saw this indie boom and I got so excited. And I'm like, this is great. But now I see how Gooseworks is constantly mistreated online, and Vivzy Pop as well. And the way they are constantly battered for what other people do and what other people say and just what people think the story should be. And even just a complete misunderstanding that villains can be charismatic and fun while still being awful. And just because the villain can be funny doesn't mean it is justifying what the villain does. Valentino from Hazbin Hotel is hilarious. I hate him, and he is awful, but he is funny. That doesn't make him less bad. That is the way people genuinely seem to think. Like, if you like a character, you're saying they're not bad. Now, personally, me, I'm not gonna buy Valentino merch. But I can also be like, yeah, I'm from fucking Florida, is one of the funniest lines in season 2. Like, that does not make me a bad person. There are other things that some people might say make me a bad person, but laughing at Valentino is not something that makes me a bad person, okay? I really need people to get this through their heads. And I don't know how to explain it in a way that people will understand. If you don't understand me saying Valentino is funny, Valentino is awful, these are two things that can coexist at the same time. Meanwhile, Gooseworks can make edgy jokes, and that doesn't make her a bad person. Gooseworks can say that she relates to her villain character, and that does not make her a villain. It just makes her self-aware of her own flaws. Because we all have flaws. We all have the potential to be a terrible person. And sometimes when you're an artist and creator, you channel that into your work. That's how you make interesting villains. Again, I don't know how to say this in a way to get through to people. And that's something that frustrates me so much, is it's like, I feel like this should be really basic. And I look back at how Tumblr used to write these mile-long dissertations breaking down character motivations and lore and stuff like that. And like analysis. College level analysis. Well, okay, some of them weren't college level. Some of them were extremely rambling. But it's like, how did we go from that to now we're on Twitter and TikTok with people who cannot even comprehend that funny and villain can coexist? And a character can be good and a fan favorite without being a main character. How did we get here? I'm so confused. But then I look at Gooseworks and the way she has been so beaten down in the last few months, going so far as to say that she has lost the love for her passion project. My hair is not gonna hold. That she doesn't want to do anything associated with the Amazing Digital Circus anymore because the fans have ruined it. And it seems like she somewhere in her gut, she knew this was going to happen, because there's a tweet from her from before the show came out where she said, guys, if this clown show is successful, I need you guys to be cool and not one of the crazy fandoms. Guess what she got? And people telling her she's not writing her own characters well. And you can just... they've ruined it for her. One of the most successful indie animated shows ever, getting a cinematic release for her finale. This is incredible. This is the kind of thing she should be celebrating, and she can't, because the audience, who are being stupid assholes, have ruined it for her. And as a creator, I'm looking at this going, and I see other people online who are like, wow, suddenly I don't know if I want to be an indie creator because I don't know if I could deal with this. And every time Vivian Madrano every time VivziePop or Gooseworks pops off and they get upset, suddenly it's, oh no, they're unhinged. How dare they not treat their customers well? Then stop being a Karen. If you want good customer service, don't be an asshole. But also, like, you cannot beat someone over and over and over and tell them they're terrible and tell them they're awful and tell them they're ruining their own story and this and blame them for something that someone else did and expect them to take it. Especially not a woman. Like, anyone. No. Not even, especially not a woman. No, anyone. You cannot continue to beat someone like that and then be offended when they pop off because you pushed them. You kept pushing until they pushed back, and then you want to scream victim. Meanwhile, there's a manga writer who had to close her entire account because people got upset that one of her characters wasn't trans. It was nothing she intended, but, and I think it might actually be they, them pronouns. Okay, yeah, just to be careful. So this creator had no intention of making this character trans. Some of the readers just latched onto it. I'm not even going to call them fans, because they're not fans, they're jerks. But these readers latched onto this character, developed a headcanon that it was trans, that the character was trans, and then started bullying the creator when it came out that they weren't. And there was one tweet, it's been taken down now, so I don't have it, but it was something like, creators need to just do their art and leave it to the fandom to do the rest. No! I say this as a fanfic writer, but you do not have any right to someone else's creation. You want a story? If you want a story, go make it your own. Do you know what I do when a story isn't what I want it to be? I write a new story. If I read something and I'm like, I think this should have gone this way, then write a new story. Not a fanfic. Go build your own story. You give it a try, right? You try and write a story how you want it. Instead of screaming that a creator didn't give you what you want, go make what you want. I have lost patience with these people. Because how dare you talk to another human being that way? How dare you feel so entitled to someone else's work? You think you have the right to control it and control what they do. Just because you bought a couple books does not mean you then get to turn around and tell the creator what to do with their story. And again, you cannot bully someone for months and then act all shocked victim when they push back. And this is why I'm genuinely concerned about the indie space now. Because like I said, when I first found out about it, I was so excited. I was like, there is so much potential here. There is so much that can be done. And the freedom that creatives are suddenly being given, incredible. The price, however, is the fact that this is happening at a time when literacy rates are in the trash and the entitlement of people is so high that, again, the audacity to think you have the right to tell a creator what to do with their story, to tell them that they don't know their own characters and they're wasting their characters. And again, like I said, I've seen people go, wow, being a successful creator right now doesn't look all that appealing. And can you blame them? It's so gross. It's so gross. And it's like the media literacy rates, literacy and media literacy rates are both so bad. But then mix it with the entitlement. It's absolutely insufferable. And I didn't even talk. So, I mentioned the Gameoverse show that Glitch is now making. And the pilot just launched. And people threw a fit that the main character, Catgirl, has curves. And talking about sexualization and this and that and everything. Looking at the development process of the character and saying, this is terrible character. I think I'm going to talk about that next week. Just the way people cannot handle curves on a female character or anything like that. I think I'll talk about that next week because I don't want to ramble too much at this point. But yeah, no, I have watched the whole thing with VivziePop and Gooseworks. Just like, how did we get here? How? And it's so sad. And it's so frustrating. And I don't have a solution, obviously. I rarely ever do. Like I say, this is just my channel where I talk about things that are on my mind. And this has been on my mind for a while lately. Because here's the thing. I can't believe I almost forgot to make this point. You do not need to watch everything that's popular. You don't need to read every book that's popular. You don't need to listen to every popular artist. You don't need to watch every movie or show that's popular, or play every game that's popular, for that matter. You don't have to. If you think you're not going to like something, or if you try something and you don't like it, you don't have to interact with it. And if you're only kind of keeping up with something for the trend and then to hate on it, what are you doing? Go do something productive. If something bothers you, you don't keep interacting with it. You can block it. You can keep scrolling. You can do anything like that. If you don't like Has Been Hotel for the designs or whatever, don't watch it. Again, you can block the tags so you don't see it. And if you do see it, you keep scrolling until you find something you like. Don't hate something. Don't spend your time hating and attacking something just because you don't like it. You're not being required to participate. Again, I don't know how to get that through to some people. If you don't like something, you're not required to watch it. Even if it's popular on social media, you don't have to. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap this here, and love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, unless you're someone who's gonna try and tell me that artists are beholden to the audience and should do as they're told, you're not going to find any sympathy here. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you think. And like I said, next week I think I'm going to be talking about sexy design and how that's not a bad thing. Plans might change, because on this channel sometimes they do, but that's another thing I've been thinking about quite a bit. So yes, thank you for watching. I'd be very grateful if you liked the video and maybe checked out some of my others, and if you like some of those, maybe subscribe to the channel. Very much appreciated. Okay. Do I have anything else to say? No, I'm worried I'm about to start rambling. So, until next time, stay safe, take care, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.